Web applications have been very popular for nearly last 2 decades and little more than that, I would say. And mobile applications have been popular for nearly 1.5 decades now. And many organizations currently develop web applications and mobile applications to cater for their customers. But does this mean that desktop applications have diminished its popularity? Interestingly, a lot of organizations still develop desktop applications, and in fact, its popularity has increased, in my opinion. A lot of applications that you see today, WhatsApp, Zoom, different kinds of social media applications, they have their desktop counterparts as well. And enterprises still develop desktop applications, whether it be customer relationship management software, enterprise resource planning software, and whatnot. Desktops are still popular in that sense. And other enterprises which wants to develop the analytic software for visualization purposes, uh, software that's required to have some desktop presence like text editors, of course, games, desktop games, and also applications like integrated development environments still very much focused on desktop applications. So in this video, let's look at desktop application development frameworks that are available in your arsenal for you to develop applications. So first of all, let's look at what are the popular programming languages that developers use to create desktop applications. And of course, this is a bit of an opinionated slide in my own opinion. So I see desktop applications are still very much created using these programming languages that you see in the slide, especially C, C++, Java, C Sharp, Visual Basic, Python, JavaScript, Perl, Kotlin, Go, Rust, Swift, and Dart. And out of those, I have added a green tick there, which I still see is being used much more than the other ones. And we'll talk about why that is so. For example, if you look at Go, Rust, Kotlin like languages, it's still they lack native GUI frameworks for development and so forth. So that's probably one of the reasons that I don't see much of desktop applications developed using those languages, and Perl being the same. And Perl, as anyway, has uh, uh, reduced its market share in terms of general purpose programming language also, and its use in a desktop application development has its minimal market share, in my opinion. So let's look at each programming language and the frameworks that you can find in those languages to create desktop applications. Let's look at C language first. In my opinion, this is the father of all the other modern languages that you see today. And those are the languages that we're going to discuss, in which you can find some desktop application development frameworks. So in C, you have this framework called GTK, and it's a GNOME toolkit that was mainly available in Linux, but it's a cross-platform framework, and it is written in C, and there is a C API for desktop application developers to utilize and create you know GUIs, graphical user interfaces. So that's one. And so this particular framework is so popular that there are so many other languages. um, this framework supports bindings for so many other languages that you will see in my slide in the next couple of slides that you will see. Another framework that you can utilize in C to develop desktop applications is this framework called TK. And if you have heard of this programming language called TCL, and there's a desktop widget library called TK, which is written in C, and thus it has a C API. So if you really want to use it, you can maybe utilize that as well. And there is a little less popular framework called Portable User Interface, and its acronym is uh, written in the other form IUP. So let's quickly look at this is the GTK website, and you can download the latest version. Latest stable version is at 4.12.5. And as I said, it has so many language bindings. You can write it in C, you can write it in JavaScript, you can write it in Perl. As I said, Perl can also be used for GUI development, but I haven't seen much though. Python binding is there. There is a Rust binding and so forth. So very popular framework for you to develop a GUI if you specifically focus on performance and cross-platform nature and wide reach when it comes to different programming languages. And this is the API reference for TK C API, and I have not used this personally, but I came across this in my research. I have found that this can also be used for development of GUI. So if you want to look at alternatives for GTK in C, this might be a good option as well. So this is the GitHub repository for TK, and you see TK widget toolkit for TCL, and you can go through the source code and see how things are developed. So in general, this is the TCL TK organization under which you see this TCL, and as you can see, it's developed using C. So its C APIs can be used for you to develop GUI applications. And this is the portable user interface website. It's not that new, or I don't see a much of development as well, but I might be wrong, but I suggest you opt for this after careful reading through some of these materials to see if it's relevant to your application and so forth. Okay, let's move forward with the other option, the C++. In my opinion, by far, C++ is the most used for desktop application development because it has a lot of options. First of all, it also has a binding for GTK, which they call as GTK MM. And there is another popular framework called WX Widgets, which actually utilizes the native GUI framework of the operating system. So if you use it in Windows, if you use it in Mac, if you use it in Linux, you'll probably get the look and feel of your GUI to be more native than in most of the other programming languages. It's something that they mention in their website as well. And you can see it's a cross-platform GUI library. And there's another popular framework for graphical user interface development is this framework called Qt. It's very popular, and there are other language bindings for this framework as well. And Qt at the moment it is at version 6, so you'll be able to see the Qt version 6 and language bindings for those versions as well. So it is also a cross-platform GUI library and a framework. So if you can also develop other applications using Qt as well. So you don't necessarily need to develop GUI. So it has a very versatile library framework for various other application types as well. So the rest of the things, except the last one, the Microsoft Foundation classes, Windows Forms, C++, Universal Windows Platform, and WinUI 3, these are Microsoft-specific frameworks for GUI development in Windows, right? So if you're targeting a Windows application, Windows desktop application, you may want to look at these things. But if you're looking at cross-platform, these are not the options. So Microsoft Foundation classes have been around for ages. I think for more than 3 decades it's been available, and it's a C++ based classes for developing applications, and by far this is the base of most of the other C++ GUI frameworks that Microsoft has developed after that. So Windows Forms is mostly a .NET related one, but you can, most of the Windows Forms applications are developed using C Sharp rather than C++. But if you want to, you can develop it using C++ as well. Universal Windows Platform is a another framework that Microsoft came up with to target various different types of platforms like mobile applications, tabs, desktop applications, and so forth. So WinUI is actually the evolution of the UWP. So if you're targeting modern type of applications, you might need to look at WinUI in Windows, but it's again a Windows only option. So consider that very sparingly. But for your modern applications, that might be a good options if you're just targeting Windows. And there's another one called Fast Light Toolkit. I haven't seen much of its usage as well, but I came across this library, which seems to be well maintained as well. But you might have to do a little bit of research before choosing this particular library. So let's look at these things as well. So this is the GTK and C++, as I said, GTK MM library. Have a look at these source code and how it's developed. You can mainly utilize object-oriented methodology with GTK using C++ and so forth. So and the GUIs are developed in that way. So many applications are developed using the GTK and C++ as well. And so WX Widgets is a very popular framework for you to develop. So many applications have been developed, and this also has other language bindings for Python, Ruby, Lua, Perl, and so forth. If you really want to utilize those different language bindings, you can use as well. So it's very very popular one, and it has a native look as per the documentation as well. And I didn't have this in my slide, but the TK library also has a C++ wrapper. And if you want to, you can utilize that as well. Qt is one of the popular, and most applications have been developed using Qt. But some developers, some organizations prefer other frameworks because of its licensing restrictions and so forth. But I do see LGPL based licenses. It has a GPL based license and a commercial license. So I'm not quite sure about the LGPL and how is it flexible for commercial applications without open sourcing your application code. So I would recommend you consult a legal expert before making a choice if you're developing a commercial applications with Qt. And MFC desktop applications, Microsoft Foundation classes, this is the documentation for that. There are so many books written for MFC as well. Not modern books, but you can find books that are like 2 decades old, but still very much valid. And if you really want to utilize, uh, you know, uh, those framework related matters, you can use MFC. And it's unlikely that MFC will ever go away because it's kind of the base for most of the other frameworks as well. But it all depends on Microsoft and its decisions on strategic decisions on these desktop frameworks and so forth. Because Microsoft inherently and had a notion that some of their frameworks always go out of support, and developers get struggled. It's my opinion, but that is what I have seen. For example, Universal Windows apps, you can read around its documentation for C++ as well. And if you look at this one, this is the Windows Forms application. So Windows Forms desktop applications can also be developed using Windows APIs, and you can utilize some .NET specific C++ functionalities as well. So I leave it for you to experiment on that as well. But use this thing unless I don't recommend using this right now at this era unless you have a compelling reason to use so. And so this is the Windows C++ Windows Forms for Visual Studio 2022 .NET Framework. So it's .NET Framework specific, as you can see. and universal windows have we already looked at this. So then this is the modern one. So the WinUI 3, which is the evolution of the UWP, Universal Windows platform. As you can see, uh, Visual Studio, you can use Visual Studio to create a Windows App SDK project for C#, .NET or C++ that has a Windows UI library, WinUI 3 user interface UI and so forth. So you can utilize either C# or C++ for this. So this is Fastlight Toolkit. This is not specific to Windows, and this is again you can utilize this application. As you can see, it's released version is in December 9, 2023. So it seems to be actively developed, and there's a 1.4 thing is about to come out as well. Okay, so this is about C++ frameworks. So let's look at Java. Yeah, so Java has historically been very good at enterprise application development, not really as good as C++ for desktop applications. But however, it had and it has some frameworks for you to choose from if you are focused on developing your desktop applications using Java. So one framework is what Java Sun system called Abstract Window Toolkit. It's a very old framework, and Swing is basically built on top of that. And Abstract Window Toolkit is its APIs are a little clumsy, and that's in my opinion. And same goes to Standard Widget Toolkit, which is not part of Java, and it is an external framework, and it's mainly developed for Eclipse, found by the Eclipse Foundation for Eclipse and so forth. And Swing has been little popular than AWT and SWT, and some applications have been written on Swing as well. So I'll again recommend you to read about Swing before starting to use it. And if you think about the latest development, I doubt how much this is developed in Oracle specific Java and so forth. So in fact, I still can see Swing and AWT packages in latest Java versions. SWT is anyway external, and Java FX became popular, and in fact, Java bundled Java FX in Java 8, but once Oracle took over Java, I think from Java 11, and afterwards, they decided not to ship it as part of Java. So it has become an independent project, and it has, evolved beyond that as well. So you can still use Java FX if you want to. And Qt Jambi, it's a community maintained wrapper around Java for Qt. And, and again, Qt is very popular, as I mentioned. So there are so many applications that are developed using Qt. But if you are into Java and you want to utilize Qt functionality, you might want to use Qt Jambi. And it depends on some of the shared libraries and so forth. So when your application needs to be run, those DLLs, shared libraries, will need to be shipped as well. So let's quickly look at its documentation. So I can still see Java AWT. I'm looking at the Java 21 documentation here. It's still part of it. So if you want to, you can still utilize it. And this is the SWT. As I mentioned, this is part of the Eclipse organization. You can still use it. My reading suggests that its API is also a little clumsy and difficult to use, so use it very sparingly as well. And Java Swing, part of the Java X package, and it's still part of the Java 21, as you can see. And if you want to, you can still utilize Java Swing for your application development. So this is about Java Swing, and some details are available in the Wikipedia as well for you to go through. So I recommend you go through, Swing as well. So Java FX was considered the successor for Swing, but it was later removed from Java as well. So you can see, Java FX. This is the Wikipedia page of Java FX, and it's clearly mentions here. Oracle announced their intention to stop building Java FX in their build of JDK 11 and later. It is no longer bundled with JDK, but it has been developed beyond that, and it's been part of OpenJDK, and check if it's really part of the OpenJDK before starting utilizing it. But anyhow, you can utilize it as a separate Java library as well. So this is the Qt Jambi, and as I mentioned, it's a community maintained open source project that provides Java language bindings for the Qt APIs and so forth. So I don't know how uh, you know latest this is does it support Qt version 6, all that you might have to go through the documentation and see, but it looks like it's not, it's like it just supports Qt 4. You might have to go through some of the documentations to see whether it supports the latest versions of Java. So latest version of Qt. I know it does say Qt Jambi 6.6. You might have to look into and see if it really supports Qt 6 projects. Yeah, it supports Qt 5 and Qt 6. So there you go. So you have an option there. So that's about Java support. So let's look at other options. The C sharp. I think, in my opinion, after C++, C sharp is the best for developing, desktop applications, particularly for Windows, of course. So for that, you have Windows Forms. As I mentioned, Windows Forms, you can use C++, but C sharp is the most popular framework for that. And later, Microsoft developed something called Windows Presentation Foundation, mainly along with their XML declarative language called XAML to define how UI should be structured and so forth. So that is also a very good option. But if you look at the modern frameworks, don't use Windows Forms or WPF. Universal Windows platform has been around for the last 4, 5, 6 years, I would say, but now the focus is more on WinUI 3 again, which is considered UWP's successor. So if you are writing something today, consider WinUI 3. So .NET mobile application UI, I think it's multi-platform, UI, application UI, is the evolution of a framework called Xamarin. Xamarin was completely a separate company, which was later, I believe, acquired by Microsoft, and then it was made part of .NET. So if you want to make a cross-platform UI using .NET, you can use MAUI for that. WinUI and other options that I have mentioned are all Windows specifics. So let's quickly look at, here it is, the Windows Forms with C Sharp, and there is this documentation that explains how to build those things. It's all drag and drop most of the time, but you still have to write some code in C Sharp to do certain work. And a desktop guide for WPF, again, as you can see, this is XAML uh, based UI, and you still have to write some code in C sharp, especially when it comes to it's a nice blend between XML and C sharp, and I'm really worried about focus a bit shifted to something else, and WPF has been a very good framework for all along. But you can still use it though. So that's the thing. So what is .NET MAUI? As you can see, so this is the multi-platform app UI. As I mentioned, you can write one code base and target it to various different types of platforms, including your mobile, your tabs, your desktop, and so forth. So that's why if you want to target it to multi-platform, this might be the best option. And it's a cross-platform desktop and mobile apps all in one framework. So as you can see here, you can target it for iOS, you can target it for Android, Mac OS, for desktop, and Windows as well. So all that. So this is a great framework. So you might have to keep an eye on this as well. And this is the WinUI 3 option for C sharp, and so there is a very simple hello world program being developed and shown here. So you might have to follow if you're gonna use C sharp for your desktop application development. So let's next look at the other option that we have, which is Python. And again, in my opinion, Python comes closer to C sharp as well for cross-platform development. C sharp is more towards Windows only, but Python after C++ is used for desktop application developer. development. One popular framework for Python desktop application is this thing called TK Inter. Some people call it Tinker as well, but I think the correct pronunciation is the TK Inter, and it is available in the default Python distribution as well. In the latest ones, I'm not quite sure about the Python 2, and maybe some versions of Python 3 might not include TK Inter, but the latest versions do include. If you can remember, I talked about TCL and TK in C, and so this is basically the wrapper around the TK uh, C around Python. So it's very easy to use, and I have used it for some of my applications, and it has come out really well. It had a little opinion among developers that its UIs are a bit ugly, but they have worked out really well, and the modern UIs look very, very good, and much more native look can be seen in that as well. And WX Python is the wrapper around WX widgets C++ one. And I have also used that. It's also a very popular framework, and has very good support for common widgets and frameworks. And for Python, for Qt being a popular framework for C++, there are a couple of Python bindings for that as well. So PyQt is one of that, and PySide is another one. PySide is basically Qt's own Python wrapper than PyQt. PyQt is something externally developed. The reason PySide exists is because of some licensing disagreements that PyQt maintainers and developers had with Qt, and then Qt developed its own Python binding, which happened to be PySide. In that sense, I recommend using PySide than PyQt, but PyQt is also very much developed. And for some time, PySide lagged behind PyQt when it comes to modern API support, but PySide has caught up in that sense. So now you can see PySide has supports the version 6 and then PyQt as well. So you might have to look into that. So GTK supports various different bindings. We saw that already. So it has a Python binding for GTK as well. So let's look at some of its documentation. So this is the TK Inter documentation in the Python.org, because it's part of Python now. So this is a very simple hello world program. You can just copy paste this and invoke it using your Python interpreter. You will get a hello world program. It's that simple. And so this is the WX Python website, and you can see its latest version is released in 2023 June, and very good framework as well. You can go into the hello world program here. Okay, yeah, yeah. So this is the a simple hello world in WX Python, and it looks very simple as well, just like the TK Inter. And you just have to copy paste this part and then open it up in TK Inter, the Python interpreter. Shoot up the Python interpreter, you will get these different views in Mac. I guess this is in Windows. And so forth, right? And you can build complex applications using WX Python as well. So this is the PyQt documentation, uh, and that is also in the Python org. Um, and you can look at how this supports your application. So it supports PyQt 6 as well, the latest one, but here it doesn't indicate. So the latest iteration is PyQt version 5.11, but I do know that PyQt 6 is out. So you have to maybe just Google it and see how it is supported. So this is Qt for Python. As you can see, this is from the qt.io website, Qt specific website, and it supports PySide 2 to PySide 6 is supported. So you might have to look into this if you are to develop something in Python along with Qt. But look for the licensing option as well. I'm not quite sure how the licensing works for Qt, because I have heard that it is a bit complicated when it comes to commercial usage of your enterprise applications. And this is the GTK binding for Python. Again, it's quite simple. Have a look at it as well. So let's look at what are the other options that we have for development. Of course, you can use JavaScript. So you might be wondering, JavaScript for desktop applications? Yes, JavaScript can be used for desktop application development as well. So this framework called Electron is so popular, and if you have used Visual Studio Code, which has become a very popular integrated development environment, and that is developed using Electron, if I'm not mistaken. And if you have used, Postman, I believe that is also developed using Electron. So have a look at it to see how those applications work in desktop environment as well. So that's a great framework to use if you are to use something in JavaScript work. And Node GUI, it is again based on Qt. Its widgets are based on Qt, but it supports HTML, CSS type coding, you know, methodologies is the logo for Node GUI. So that can also be used. Proton native is relatively new, but looks very promising, and it has something quite closer to React and React Native syntax for you to utilize and code in your native applications. And this NWJS, previously known as Node WebKit, so this is based on the Chromium engine and the Node.js. So I believe the UI is rendered using some sort of a browser-like or browser emulation. So again, looks very popular, and some applications have been written using that as well. And app.js, again, this is again relatively new. It's still being developed. That's what the website states. So use it very sparingly and see how things get developed there. But if you really want to, you can experiment with it as well. So let's look at some of the documentation for this. So this is the Electron one. I think by far the most advanced JavaScript GUI development framework or desktop development framework. So many uh, users use it. Skype is being used. As I said, Postman is being used, Visual Studio Code, and all these other applications. Even Microsoft Teams is being developed using Electron. So this looks great. And some popular applications. So you might have to look into those as well. So this is the Node GUI, and you can see the desktop application development, and you will be using Qt because it's based out of Qt, and you will be using Node syntax, Node.js syntax to develop your applications. And if you look at Proton Native, create desktop applications through a React syntax, and you can develop applications like this. You can see this React-like syntax, and basically it's React is what I feel like. So maybe if you are in love with React, and this might be a good, native application development toolkit for you. And if you look at NWJS, you can utilize it as well. And there are some uh, examples you can see from the GitHub. If you want to, you can have a look at it as well. So app.js, it's particularly states that it's looking for the help, looking for community help. App.js is work in progress and needs a lot of improvements. So um, and it looks like it has something to do with C++ as well. So there are two areas you can help. If you code in C++, try to implement features that are only supported in one platform or two. We need all three major platforms to work: Mac, Linux, and Windows. And if you're professional in JavaScript and Node.js, then you can help us by implementing JS wrappers for C++ API. So there is some C++ thing happening underneath as well. Maybe Chromium, maybe some sort of a browser engine is being used. So you might have to look into that as well. Right. So what else can be used for a desktop application development? Swift. Swift, it's a programming language from Apple, and Swift UI is to develop uh, you know uh, native applications for Apple devices mainly, and you can utilize it if you're targeting only Apple. This might be a good option, and obviously it will look quite sleek and nice. As you can see, Swift UI helps you to build great looking apps across all Apple platforms with the power of Swift. And surprisingly little code, and you can bring even better experience to everyone on any Apple device using just one set of tools and APIs. So have a look at it. I'm not a Swift developer to comment on how good this is and so forth, but it looks like it is an option if you are targeting for Apple platforms. And another option for you to develop, desktop applications is using the Dart programming language, and there is a framework called Flutter, mainly used for mobile application development, but Flutter can also be used for desktop application as well. So if I just go into here, you see Flutter on desktop and build high quality desktop apps without compromising compatibility or performance. And so that's because it doesn't depend on a browser engine or anything like that. So they are saying that it's much more native and high performant and so forth. I have heard about Flutter mobile application, so it should be great on the desktop as well. And last but not the least, and another language that you can use for desktop application development is Rust. And Rust is relatively new compared to other languages that we mentioned. Maybe, I'm excluding Dart on that, um, and maybe Swift as well. So Rust is a competitor for C++, and that's what I'm been like following along. And there's so many arguments, debates going on in various different forums on Rust versus C++ and so forth. So it's gaining popularity. So one thing it lacked was a GUI framework, but looks like the community is focusing on that as well. So there is a framework called Tauri, and which you can use. And again, it's sort of web browser based. So we look at that. And there's this new thing called Iced. For me, it looks quite sleek and nice. And there's this other thing called Druid, as well as a GTK wrapper. GTK is, of course, C, and it's a wrapper around that. So anything C, basically, you can use in other languages as long as there's a binding. And usually, all languages have binding to C programming language. So there is a way to use it, but only thing is someone will have to develop it. And as I got to know that Rust, there is another you know framework that allows you to call C++ libraries from Rust. And uh, so in that sense, basically Rust can be utilized with Qt as well. So however you're using Rust format, but it's Qt is what underneath that you will be calling and so forth. So let's look at some of these as well. So this is the Tauri framework that I said: build optimal, secure, front-end independent application for multi-platform deployment. And looks promising. And there's some development happening here. If you look at this one, this is the GitHub page. There's a commit yesterday. It looks like it's actively being developed. And you can see build smaller, faster, and more secure desktop application with web front end. That's what I meant. It kind of an emulation of a web view and WebKit, GTK, and so forth, right? So have a look at that as well. And this is the iced Rust focus framework. And there are some of the if you just click on one of that, you will see some details about how things are developed there. So it looks very cool in that sense. So that's why I said I like it. So maybe if you are focusing on Rust, this might be an option for you to develop desktop applications. And then this is the Druid one. There is a sample code written down here, and you can focus on developing desktop applications using Druid with Rust if you want to. And last but not least, the Rust and the GTK, our common GTK that has a Rust binding as well, called GTK RS. Well, so this has been a little longer video, and thank you very much for hanging around and listening to this video. Please subscribe to my channel, and you will get notification when you click the bell button on some of my newest videos that I'm planning to record and release. I hope you to see on another day. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video on how to develop various different desktop applications. using different programming languages and frameworks. See you later.